Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Welcome to another video. We're going to talk about the single game showdown for Monday night on DraftKings here in week 8. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New York Football Giants. This is going to be a strange game, very possibly, with the totals the way they are, with the spread where it is, with what we have here. This looks like it's going to just be a butt kicking for the Buccaneers from Tampa Bay. To put on everybody from New York. But look, it's a single game showdown, so there's plenty of variance, and there's a lot of different ways that we can tackle this slate. There's a lot of different ways that we can play it. I suggest that you build a story that you can tell yourself when you're making your lineups, and we're going to go through and we're going to build lineups on this slate, or at least talk about the philosophy behind building lineups on this slate, so I can help you guys have a better idea of what you want to do when you go into building your lineups. And the main thing that we talk about on most of these slates is that correlation is the biggest key when it comes to building your lineups for single game showdown. So we use the Fantasy Labs lineup builder, at least for the purposes of these videos. I'll walk you through the purposes of the things that you can do on that lineup builder and give you a framework so you can have a place to start from. As always, like the video, subscribe, leave a reply, ring the notification bell, click some damn thing, and let's get started. So, a couple of things that we do need to talk about on this video. One, we have a situation where we just don't know about whether, Godwin's going to be ready. We just don't know. So, we'll find out 90 minutes before lock. Doesn't look like he's going to go, but we'll have our inactives. We do know that on Tampa Bay, when Godwin's out, Miller does take a big step forward. This might be the last week that we can bank on something like that. We also have Leonard Fournette. With Antonio Brown coming really quickly. We have Leonard Fournette coming back and taking over a pretty solid role in this offense. No matter how good Ronald Jones was doing or seemed to be doing with the Lions share with Leonard Fournette out, it does seem like Tom Brady, who does have some control over player personnel issues, right? Like that was part of his deal when coming, was that he was going to have something to do with the player personnel choices on the team. They brought in Gronk, they brought in AB, they brought in Fournette, and these are his guys. So Ronald Jones, even in the games that, even though he smashed in the games that Fournette was out, now with Fournette back, it does look to be moving towards a timeshare sort of role, 60-40 at best, maybe 50-50, and that kind of renders both of them somewhat useless to us unless they play the hot hand. Look, as good as Ronald Jones was, 21.8 points, 18.5 points, 29 points, useful in the passing game. Yes, he did drop some balls. Yes, when you're playing Ronald Jones, you have to live with the fact that he's going to make mistakes from time to time. That's part of his game. Obviously, Tom Brady does not believe that should be a part of your game, so he would rather have Fournette be the guy, and he's cheaper, so at least we have that. But we don't know how this breakdown is going to be, right? We don't know how the share of everything is going to go, whether or not Fournette is going to cut into the goal line work. We know that he is heavily utilized in the passing game, or at least has been in 2 of the last 4 games that he's played, with 5 targets and 4 catches against Carolina, 6 receptions on 7 targets last game against Las Vegas, and now they get the Giants, who I kind of feel like Tampa Bay can do whatever they want to. So we're going to see a lot of Tampa Bay teams this week. And Tom Brady, rumors of his demise have been greatly exaggerated. Sometimes it just comes down to the fact that you need better weapons around you in an offense for you as a quarterback, whether you're 25 or 45. For you to be as good as you can possibly be at quarterback, you need guys that can separate. You need guys that can move safeties. You need guys that can actually make plays with or without the ball to present danger to opposing defenses, so that you can do your job. And especially somebody like Tom Brady, who more often than not just chooses the path of least resistance. You don't normally see Tom Brady trying to just throw balls through the eye of a needle, right? He's not trying to pinpoint things. He just picks the spot that is right. Kind of like LeBron James, right? Where he makes the right play. Tom Brady with the offense generally just makes the right play and throws it to the open wide receiver. And when you have talent like Godwin, like even an aged Gronk, even Mike Evans, who's had up and downs this year, really bad when Godwin plays, really great when Godwin's been out. Tom Brady just finds the open man over and over and over again. And so I think we're going to see a lot of Tom Brady captains, as that's kind of what's popping in the optimal right now. And that's going to be the thing that always pops in the optimal, for the reason that quarterbacks tend to have a higher median projection than most other players on the slate. However, quarterbacks tend to always project a ceiling of around 30 to 33 fantasy points. That's just always where they end up. But we know that quarterbacks don't typically get 40 to 50 fantasy points, and we've seen guys break slates with 40 to 50 points. Dalvin Cook this week, we saw it last week with Adams, we've seen it with Will Fuller, we've seen it with numerous players, where position players have more of a chance on a big week if they score 2-3 touchdowns, have 10 catches, running backs run for 150 plus yards with use in the passing game. They can access those 40 plus games way more often than quarterbacks. So what happens is, on showdown slates, you get quarterbacks that are way over-owned in the captain spot, right? So unless the quarterback is somebody that I really think can break a slate, and for a quarterback to break a slate, usually it's going to involve rushing touchdowns, even if they have 4 touchdowns passing. Unless those 4 touchdowns passing are to 5 different dudes, kind of like Mahomes in week 8, where he threw 5 touchdown passes. Tyreek Hill caught 2, but only for like 25 DraftKings points, where Mahomes had 40 DraftKings points. He would have been the optimal player. But again, Mahomes is a different sort of animal. And anytime I've got Mahomes on the slate, I'm going to bump up my number of quarterback captain allocation for that slate. On a typical slate, I try to keep it around 15%. If you're going to be building Tom Brady lineups, I want to build 2 groups. You can set very simple rules in the Fantasy Labs Optimizer. We'll go over those in a little bit. If you're hand building, those groups are going to involve everybody that is available for us on Tampa Bay who is involved in the passing game. I'm not going to include the running backs, but I'm not going to exclude running backs from lineups that have Tom Brady at captain in the flex. We are going to include Miller. We are going to include Gronk. We're going to include Tyler Johnson. We're going to include basically everybody that is involved at all in the passing game for Tom Brady. And we're going to make sure that at least 2 of those players are in every Tom Brady at captain lineup. Because if Tom Brady is a viable captain, it means that he threw for like 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. And so there's likely going to be at least 2 of his pass catchers that you're going to need to have with him in flex if he is going to be the winning captain. The other group that we're going to build to bring that back is we're going to make a group that says at least 1 of every offensive player. I'm also going to be including the kicker in the quarterback captain group. So Tom Brady and the Bucs kicker, or if you're going to use Daniel Jones, I'll use Daniel Jones and I'll include his kicker and passing targets in that game. Evan Engram, we're going to include Gallman, we're going to include not the kicker, Golden Tate, yes. All those guys are going to be involved in the Tom Brady bring back captain group, and at least 1 of these in every single lineup with Tom Brady. If you want, you can also say don't include the defense with Tom Brady. If the defense has a big day, it's unlikely that Tom Brady's going to have a big day. The Buccaneers defense, that is. So same defense and same quarterback usually are not correlated with one another, but they can be if you play out specific game scripts. So if you're building a bunch of different lineups, if you're building 1 or 3 lineups, it's somewhat irrelevant. If you're building multiple lineups, 20 lineups, 100 lineups, 150 lineups, and you want to tell the story that Tom Brady throws 4 touchdowns in the first half, and then the defense gets to pin its ears back because they're going to be up 20 in the second half, and they just get to play from ahead. Tom Brady's probably not going to end up being your winning captain in that spot, but also you'd assume that the defense has some easy sack opportunities that lead to fumbles and everything else. Same thing goes for Daniel Jones. If we're going to play him at captain, we're going to build a group with all of his pass catchers in that group as well, avoiding the running backs. Something with Slayton that we do need to recognize, I pay attention very closely to end zone targets. They're the highest leverage targets that there are for a wide receiver, and Darius Slayton, one of the top 5 in the league. You know, the leader coming into this week had like 8, and tied for 5th was 6, and he was one of those guys with 7 end zone targets on the year. So Darius Slayton, somebody who can get it done for us with deep passing, right? We know he's got big splash ability, as is evidenced by his average depth of target, as his average yards per catch. Excellent on all counts. But when they get close, they do also look to Darius Slayton, as they just seem to have no idea the Giants, how to use Evan Engram at all. Their idea of getting creative with Evan Engram is to say, hey, look, we're going to run a jet sweep with our tight end. We're really creative. No, you're donkeys. You can't figure out that you have one of the most athletic tight ends in the league, and you throw him, he doesn't get the ball thrown to him further than 4 yards downfield. It is what it is. At least 2 of these guys, and then also the kicker. And we're going to bring it back with Jones and basically everybody on Tampa Bay. If we're going to be building groups around skill position players, if we have a captain that is going to be Mike Evans, we're going to make sure that Tom Brady is in that group with him, as if Mike Evans has a 2-touchdown, 8-catch, 170-yard day, Tom Brady also likely is going to have enough points for us to warrant being in the flex. So we want to tie one's performance to the other. And this generally means if this player goes off, right? This is single game showdown. Brady doesn't need to have a 35-point game to be warranted being in the flex. If Mike Evans has a 35+ game and then multiply that by 1.5 for the captain spot. But if he does that, Tom Brady's going to do enough to warrant being one of your flex plays. It's very rare that a wide receiver is going to be a captain and then his quarterback also not be in that winning lineup. If the winning wide receiver or the winning captain is a wide receiver, highly unlikely that his quarterback not going to be in that lineup. That goes for basically any one of those pass catchers, whether it's going to be Miller, whether it's going to be Gronk, and the same thing on the other side. If we've got a captain lineup with Slayton, expecting multiple touchdowns from him, if that is what you're going to be expecting, or they're playing from behind and he maybe gets 7-8 catches, breaks 100 yards, gets into the end zone 1, possibly 2 times, you're going to tie Daniel Jones to that. The problem is Tampa Bay is a very, very, very good defense, tough against the run, and really young, talented cornerbacks who are coming into their own. So this is a very stingy sort of defense. The last group that I typically build, and I will be this is not a hard and fast rule. I'm way more lenient on this when you can tell the story that you want to tell, but I will typically build another group, not at captain. I don't allow captain or kicker defenses or kickers in my captain spot. And if a defense or kicker ends up being the winning combination that night, then you know what? That's just not a slate that I'm going to win, because I'm not going to waste lineups on building a defense or a kicker into my captain spot. If it wins, there's 3 island game showdown slates a week that I can attack those other ones. It happens so infrequently that it's something I don't want to attack. What I will be a little bit more lenient on is that I typically will build a group that allows 1 out of this group of 4. The 2 kickers and the 2 defense, I'll allow only 1 of that group. If I feel that the Bucks defense, like I said before, if they are going to get out to a good lead and the kicker is going to be viable because they're going to score over 30 fantasy points, and maybe one of them is a 50-yarder, that suck up might be viable, and the Buccaneers defense also might be viable, despite the fact that they have a really, really ridiculous price on this slate. I'd much rather have a position player at 7K than a defense at 7K. But if that is the route that you're taking, if you've got multiple lineups, I'll build a secondary group that says at most 2 of these, and then I'll say at most 1, and limit a specific, if the Buccaneers defense is in a group, do not allow the Giants or the Giants kicker in the group, so that the lineup builder knows how to build those things. As I said before, we'll go over the groups. I've got my setup all ready to go. I've got my 5 basic position rules. Pair a captain quarterback with at least 2 of his wide receiver, tight ends, or kickers from the same team. Pair a captain quarterback with at least 1 quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end from the opponent. Pair a captain wide receiver with his quarterback from the same team. Pair a tight end at captain with his quarterback from the same team. Limit to at most 1 defense or kicker from the same game. And you can change this to 2 if you think that the Bucks kicker or the Bucks defense are both going to be viable in lineups on this slate, because you want to pick on Daniel Jones and you think that the Buccaneers might cause a bunch of sacks and fumbles, possibly score a touchdown on defense, and score 30 to 36 points on offense, making the kicker extremely viable as well. You can push that up to 2. For the sake of this video, we'll make it 1, and you build a separate player correlation group to make sure that it's not the Giants kicker and defense that ends up in that group. So we'll accept those, move out of here, generate 150 lineups. I do have to give you the disclaimer every single time I do this. You never go to a site and just build, I'm going to go to the site, I'm going to use your vanilla projections, I'm going to build 150 lineups without any sort of rules, or with just the basic rules that I just gave you on this, and think that you're going to print money. That's not how any of this works. That's never been how this works. You have to spend a lot of time getting the lineups that you want. As I said before, I had already preset a specific rule where I maximized Daniel Jones and Tom Brady at a maximum of 8%. of my captain exposures. So I got 9% of Daniel Jones and 9.3% of Tom Brady. Fournette is the number one captain on this first run. Ronald Jones, the secondary captain. Probably going to have to tweak those things to make sure that you don't end up with both of them in lineups. Wayne Gallman, Daniel Jones, Slayton, Tate, Shepard, Evans. Best advice I can give you for a showdown captain spot, try to make sure that you think that the guy that you're putting in captain can be the highest scoring guy on the slate. That's where you want to fill captain with your highest projected guys. Don't get too cute and think I'm going to put this $200 guy in the captain because then I can just jam everybody else into the flex. Somebody else is going to beat you as one of those guys goes for 30 fantasy points, which will be worth 45, while your captain might have a great day for a $200 player on a slate and end up with like 8 fantasy points, but they're going to end up with 45. And you're going to be chasing the entire way. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. Look out for another video right here.
He's a legend.